Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Journey Within podcast. Got Joel Strickland back for another one here today, and we've got, well, at least a special topic to talk about for us, and that is picking the right property in Arkansas when looking to either start an outfitting operation, a duck club, or if you're just looking to get a personal lease and hunt down there like that. We're actually going together and we're going to start our own waterfowl operation in Arkansas, which is the wintering grounds for most of the mallards and so forth here in North America, and really the North America mecca of waterfowl hunting, I guess you could say. Personally, I'd been looking for a lodge or an area in Arkansas for a number of years, and a big part when I look at areas to acquire or starting an outfitting operation on is always finding, number one, the best person to run it, right? And anybody that knows Joel knows that, well, he's obviously very knowledgeable, but also a great manager and so forth, and respected, and I couldn't think of a better person to kind of run our operation down there. So, Joel, how are you doing today before we get all these questions I've got here listed and how we pick the property and so forth of starting this up?
Man, I'm doing great today. I'm excited to be with you, excited to be talking about our new endeavor that we're just getting started with.
Yep. No, it's a good one. And again, I've been looking in Arkansas for a number of years and just hadn't found the right spot, right lodge, right person. And as fate would have it, I met Joel on a conservation snow goose hunt. Fast forward, and I think it was 6 or 8 months ago, we finally connected and said, hey, I think we're both looking in the right direction here of what we'd like to do. Let's get active and see if we can't find the right piece of ground as the next step.
Yeah, and the location, finding the right piece of ground is really what it's all about as far as being able to make all the things right for you. And you mentioned whether you're looking for a place to lease or buy a small place to develop for your own hunting, or trying to do an outfitting deal. Those are all three very, very different, unique needs. Sometimes one can be all of those things, but realistically, what we're trying to do is a very, very particular type of location and property in the right area and all those things, so that we're not just going to be hunting 2 or 3 times a week. We're going to be hunting every day, and so what we need is something very unique.
So, as from your history, Joel, I mean, from all the hunting that you've done in Arkansas, the outfitting and the guiding and so forth, like for this project, let's just get really specific. So, for our project of wanting to go and starting outfitter from scratch, right? We're going to an area that's never been outfitted before, no lodge in place. We're going to build a lodge on the property and so forth. So this is literally from scratch. So Arkansas is a blank slate from you being able to go and really pick a location anywhere in the state. What was your first step when you're like, okay, I want to go in this area because of X?
I started looking in the Cache and the White River areas because those are historically the biggest concentrations of birds come down those corridors in the eastern part of Arkansas. If I'm picking, kind of hedging my bets on what's going to happen in the years to come, what's happened historically, I love that area. I started my very first, several years of duck hunting was on the Cache River and the White River areas in that, that part of Arkansas.
Once you knew what area, like what type of habitat are you looking for on that ground now? Like what water, what timber, what grasses and so forth, when you're like, this is ideal, obviously location to the river and so forth like that. Like what does the actual ground hold?
Yeah. So, when you're looking at a specific place, of course, everybody, when they think of coming to Arkansas, they want to hunt in flooded timber. So if I'm looking for a place, that we're going to try to buy and develop and make for a hunting operation, I want to try to get some land that has some flooded timber on it. So that's number one. But if I'm looking for the whole big picture, honestly, I'm looking for an area that they can feed and they can rest in, loaf in, and be right in a pretty good flyaway area, close to other, areas that have higher concentrations of ducks, or moist soil habitat. And I have been very big on moist soil for 20 some odd years, and I learned really just in a few years how important that type of habitat is for wintering waterfowl, especially in our area in Arkansas. It gives them cover, it gives them an incredible amount of food, it's natural, it's inexpensive once you get the property set up to do that.
Any of the outfitters that make a great outfitter is when you can control the controllables. You'll be setting everybody up to have a great experience when they come with you, and that increases the rebooking and so forth. So when Joel mentioned if we can control when the areas are flooded versus if we were on something next to a river, and say the water level doesn't come up for the whole waterfowl season, well, then you can't hunt that area, right? There's no water in there. There's no reason for the ducks to go in there. Then it's just a muddy area. So if we can control our flooded timber area and flood it each year to the depth that we want, now you're controlling another controllable along the way.
So we can adjust the water level off of these they're like 8 inches, I think.
Slide them in and out.
Yeah, slide them in and out. So when we get ready to drop the water out, we'll just pull them one board at a time.
Okay.
And then
Let
over
it go,
2 weeks, 2 weeks pull out another one, 2 weeks pull out another one, and that way it staggers the rate of waterfall, and then it encourages the right kind of growth. If you just pull everything out, that's when you get too much of this.
Gotcha.
And cockleburr.
Now let's get specific on the property that we just purchased, and how the habitat changes and so forth of how we're going to set up specifically on the property that we have now. So just take it, Joel, like where it's located, acres and areas that's got timber on it, and what the habitat looks like on it.
So our property that we just purchased is located on the White River, just close to Augusta, between Augusta and Bald Knob, and we have about a mile and a half of river frontage, and then it's a little bit less than 1,700 acres total. And on that, we've got about 900 acres that's open ground that used to be a soybean farm for I don't know how many years, many years, and it was enrolled into the WRE program a few years ago, and they came in and developed it as a wetland type of area. There's impoundments across it. There's like 6 or 7 impoundments that we can control the water on. We can pump water to it if we want to, and let water out when we want to. And then the balance of that 900 acres that is not in impoundments, it will naturally flood when the river gets up. And then it's been those areas, it's probably 70% of that entire area, it's been planted in hardwood trees. So there's been several 100,000 hardwood trees that was planted on it about a year ago. And so that's the open ground side of the property. And then through the middle of the property, we have a great big giant creek that a lot of people would say, well, that's a river. I mean, it's big and it's deep. And so that kind of divides the property. And so on the west side of the property is all woods. And so we have a combination of lowland, bottomland, hardwoods. And then we have a little bit higher ground pine trees that are mature. They're ready to be harvested if we choose to do that. It's really kind of a beautiful scene as far as the pines, because there's really tall grass in it. There's some upland birds, quail and woodcocks and things like that are in that area. We got turkeys. We got lots of big deer on the property, and so it's really a very unique property. But like you said earlier, there's no buildings on it. It's a blank slate. The guys that had the property before us did the the enrollment in the WRE and took it out of production. So the work they've done is the first step, but really we've got a blank slate, just like you said. And I'm really excited about that because from a standpoint of being able to watch the habitat grow and change, and we enhance it and see it happen from really the ground level is so super cool to me. And ducks are already using it. I mean, we've had a lot of ducks on it this year.
Yep. Now, so we've got the property. How many blinds are you planning to have on the property when it's all said and done?
Yeah, I think the first year we're looking at 12 to 14 blinds probably on the open ground. And then on the timber side, we'll probably put a few in the areas where the water's going to get really deep. And then, of course, everybody wants to stand next to a tree and shoot a duck. So, you don't need a blind necessarily in those locations. But, we'll probably put 4 or 5 blinds on the wooded side as well.
As Joel's operating the lodge, he doesn't want a morning to where he wakes up and sees what the wind's doing and goes, we don't have a set for that. We need a blind for whatever the weather, whatever the wind's doing. And with I should note also, besides our own property that we're going to, that we have and we're going to create into this waterfowl mecca for our operation, we're also going to lease other ground in the surrounding areas. So we'll be able to bounce over, say we need to go do some goose hunting in the afternoon. We'll be able to go do that. If there's other flooded timber, we'll be able to go bounce and do that, just to kind of make it a full package for everybody. But I can tell you, I was hooked from the second I stepped on the property, right? Like for a guy from Michigan, I stepped on it and went, holy smokes, just because it is a blank slate and we can create it into what we want. And the ducks are already there. It's ideal, right? Like it's the habitat where the ducks are already at. We can just improve it more and get them in there even more so. So here's probably the toughest decision that we had to do along this. It wasn't where we wanted the property. Once we found the property, it wasn't that. wasn't picking Joel as the guy that's going to run this. It wasn't the food. It wasn't where the lodge is going. It was trying to come up with a darn name for this, right? Like a name incorporates so much of an outfit or a club or anything that you have, of making sure that you pick a name that really encompasses the area that it's in, but also what you're going to do. And I have to admit, Joel came up with the name, and once he said it, it was golden. So Joel, explain how you came up with the name, but then more so the backstory of really what the name is.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we spent, even before we even got the property, we started saying, well, we need to think of a name. And I started putting, some time into thinking about it, and it's taken a long time. Every guy that came out to the property to help me do stuff, we'd have brainstorming sessions. We brainstormed with you, Mark, and Ryan, and just trying to figure out the right name. And we had 2 or 3 that we were pretty good, and a whole bunch of them that, well, no, we don't want to be on the X Outfitters, or something like that.
On the X or feet down, wings out, like any of that stuff, right?
Right. And so one of the coolest places on the property is on the big creek, and there's a spot that there's an old bridge that I don't even know when it was built. Definitely over 100 years ago, probably in the late 1800s if I had to guess. You can definitely see it on old topo maps from the early 1900s. And so you know it's there. And then sometime it was destroyed and never rebuilt. And so, but there are still parts of that bridge that are still there. There's some big concrete platforms that are, where you would have driven, across it. And again, this was probably done with a horse and a buggy, maybe early cars, in the early 1900s may have driven across that thing. It's just a cool place. But we still don't really fully understand everything about the Lost Bridge. And so I started calling it the Lost Bridge. And then one day I was hunting with a group of guys, and I said, we're going to go hunt over there by the Lost Bridge. And I was like, that sounds like a cool name. Like the Lost Bridge. And so I kind of beat that around with some of my buddies a little bit to kind of see what they thought. And they thought, well, that sounds cool. So I added it to the list. And then when I shared it with you, Mark, you go, that's the one. And so we want to call it the Lost Bridge Duck Club.
And I like, as soon as you said it, I'm like, that's it. It's the Lost Bridge Duck Club. That's what the name is. Like, we had some close ones to where you're like, yeah, that'll work. But it just wasn't that, man, that's it. And as soon as you said it, that was it. So everybody listening, Lost Bridge Duck Club, we're going to have a ton more information coming about it here in the near future. Right now, it's go time, right? Like,
it is going to be amazing. I'm super excited about it. It's a very special place. 8 or 9 days after we turned the water on, probably around the 8th or 9th or 10th of January, and it was just thousands upon thousands of ducks. And a buddy of mine that was out there scouting with me that afternoon, when we saw just the crazy amount of ducks, I looked over at him, I said, this is going to work.